When you have data in the toolbox, you've finished final data validation, and you've assigned null value codes to every data record or hour of data that you don't want reported to AQS, then you can go down to AQS File Creation. Now, if you haven't entered your codes, your AQS codes, into the toolbox, just as you would for any data logger, for example, that formats data into AQS format, the first time you click this, you're going to see this. And that means that you have to tell the toolbox what your instrument is so that it matches up with what AQS thinks your instrument is when you upload your data. I've already done that for you, so we can go on to AQS data file creation, but how to do that is in another video. The next step, AQS data file creation. Step 4, these sections correspond to sections in the SOPs, which are accessed just by clicking any of these Click Here for Help File button. So we're on 4, AQS data file creation. We click that. Now, if you have data in the toolbox for more than one site, more than one parameter, you'll have multiple items to choose from here in these drop-down boxes. At this point, we've only entered these codes, which are very easy to add, and we'll show you in another video. These codes that correspond to your measurement method, the parameter, the units, because you could be using the same method, but you could have configured it to report data in micrograms per cubic meter or milligrams per cubic meter. And then for sample duration, these are 1 hour records. So in this case, we only have one in every one of these drop-down boxes, so it makes it easy. Now we know that we have data for the first 2 weeks of December, even though most of it is coded with null value codes, but we are going to generate an AQS file anyway. Now you could click this pink button if you have lots of gaps in your data where you've got multiple rows with no data whatsoever. You could click here and then the toolbox would add a null record with the code AF. And in that case, you demonstrate that you are monitoring, and for whatever reason, you don't have records for those hours. So that is something that I recommend doing, because then your records in AQS are complete, at least with one record for every single row during the intervals when you were trying to make measurements. So I'm going to click OK. It does it fairly quickly. And now the next selection box, you could select pipe delimited or XML. Pipe delimited is a little bit easier to look at, so we'll leave it that way. AQS accepts either formatting. So now we're going to click Inspect Data, and instead of just a table, this comes out in a report, and it tells you if you have any values that are outside that range. Remember, when we inputted the data, there was an automatic population of a range corresponding to EPA's method detection limit, and then the highest end of the range that's generally expected for this parameter. And then if there are any data points that are really far off from the average, so more than 3 sample standard deviations from the average, and if you have any values show up here that don't have AQS null value codes, it doesn't mean that those data are necessarily invalid, but you should probably just verify one more time that they are valid and support any high concentrations you have with the justifications of passing quality control checks, maybe even supporting data such as simultaneously high wind speed with high PM or something like that. So this report allows you to look at your data first before you generate the AQS formatted file, and you can also click here View Data in Spreadsheet format, which is super useful for those of us who like working in Excel, and you can just at any point in time just select the whole table in the toolbox, whatever table you are looking at, by clicking this upper left hand corner, which selects the whole sheet, and then you can just right click and say copy and then paste the whole thing into Excel if you wanted to. So this is another useful way to look at your data that you're getting ready to format for AQS and upload into AQS. So I'm going to click the lower X. I do not need to save data on my clipboard because I'm not copying it into Excel at this point. So we go back to this report. So once you're finished looking at the report, you can click the lower X, and now you can create the AQS raw data file, and it asks you where you want to put it. What it also does is it assigns a file name, which is super useful, the parameter and the beginning date and the ending date of the data contained in that file. So at this point, we're going to save this. and it tells us it's saved, and now we can look at it. Ta-da! Is that the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life? And you can see that there are quite a few null value codes, but we've left some of the data just for demonstration purposes to show you what happens when you generate a file for AQS. The original data point that you've determined is invalid due to miscellaneous machine malfunction, code AM, is there in place of the actual data point. So the codes take the place of the data points. And at this point, now you have this data. It is named with the parameter name, the beginning date, and the end date by the toolbox, and you can upload it into AQS. If you've entered your QA data, like the results of your zero checks, the results of your flow rate checks, results of internal checks that you do, as well as external audits, you can enter that data into the toolbox, and then EPA also expects you to upload your QA data, especially if you are monitoring for regulatory purposes. You need that QA data in AQS to support the validity of your data. And at this point, you've got your AQS formatted file ready, and now you can upload that into AQS, confident that because we checked in AQS that these codes exist for this parameter and this site, we're confident that AQS will accept the data. So we're going to exit form, and that takes us back to the main switchboard. We're ready to go into AQS and upload the data until we import the next 2 weeks worth of work. How exciting. Woohoo! So at this point, we've gone from this data file, which was originally .dat as the file name extension, and we've made a copy and changed the file name extension to .txt just so we can look at it. We've gone from a file that looks like this to ready for AQS formatted file that looks like this, which is how you need to get your data looking in pipe delimited format, although the toolbox does XML format also in order for AQS to accept your data. Woohoo! How exciting!